It seems like we've made it to the characters square, and we're ready to jump off with an entirely new category of the face model and how we stick that face on a brand. Now, it's a lot of fun to talk about characters, and there's a lot of different directions we're going to go with this, but keep in mind just a couple things. Your brand, or the brand of your client that you're working with, they have heroes and they have villains. Every good story has heroes and villains, antagonists and protagonists. And brand stories have these as well. Your brand may not accentuate the villains, or they may not hide the villains, depending on the kind of brand that they are. We're also going to be talking about these real and fictional characters. We're going to start off talking about real. And the reason we do that is a lot of you are here talking about your personal brand. And for you, you're probably not going to lean on these fictional characters. You're going to lean more on your personal story. You're going to lean on the stories that different people in your brand or involved with your brand bring to the table. Let's take a look at some examples of that. The first category of real characters we're going to look at are the owners. Owners, CEOs, the brand themselves.
The boss.
The boss, right, exactly. The boss. The person who makes the decisions. Now, if you're a brand storyteller and you're working with a brand who has a CEO or an owner or a boss that is vanilla and bland and boring, then maybe this isn't a direction to go for you. But if you've got an owner, a CEO, or a boss who's vivacious and exciting and playful, then you've got a good candidate for somebody that you want to put out as a brand representative for you. Virgin has done exactly that with its owner, CEO, Richard Branson. Oh, so sorry. Sir Richard Branson. Sir Richard Branson is a very exciting, vivacious, and interesting person. He makes people want to watch. He engages in actions as a character that make people want to watch. Now, it's important for you to understand this one little part of Richard Branson's life, this one little story of his that epitomizes the kind of person that he is. It was several years ago, and it was in Monaco at a Formula One race. So already we're talking about some pretty wealthy people. Formula One race car owners that also happen to own airlines. That's a whole different category of people. I'm not even sure what they drink when they're at parties like that. Is it just like glasses of wine with diamonds and gold crushed up in it? We're not sure. Emily doesn't know either. In any case, it's a fancy shindig when you're at your Formula One race and you're watching your race car zoom around and around and around whatever they zoom around and around and around. Well, Richard Branson was standing next to Tony Fernandez, who's the CEO of AirAsia. And the two of them, both airline CEOs and both Formula One race car owners, started ribbing one another. And eventually a bet was proposed and agreed upon. Whoever's Formula One race car came in last, second to the other, the owner would have to dress up as a stewardess and go work one transatlantic flight for his competitor's airline. Well, this is a story about Richard Branson losing that bet. Sir Richard Branson and his Formula One car and driver lost that day in Monaco. And a while later, Sir Richard Branson, the billionaire, dressed up in a red stewardess's outfit, uniform, put on incredibly bright red lipstick and some, what I would consider very, very good-looking heels. I thought he wore the heels well. And he went and he did his cross-transatlantic flight on his friend's competitor's airline. Now think about what billionaires are capable of. Did this billionaire pay a ridiculous amount of money to get his face done up, prosthetics on his nose, a wig to make it look like he was completely somebody else? Did he try to hide from the, I'm using air quotes again, humiliation of losing this bet and having to go and pay up? No. He called a press conference. He got the press involved. Hundreds of photographers showed up and took thousands of pictures. Article after article after article. Google it and count the articles of news agencies reporting on Sir Richard Branson losing a bet. They mentioned Virgin Airline. And if you skim enough, if you look hard enough, you'll find Air Asia and you'll find Tony Fernandez. But they're hardly mentioned because who's the focus of this? Sir Richard Branson. That kind of playfulness, that kind of I'm a person too, that kind of I can make fun of myself, that's what I look for. Me, personally, that's what I look for in a brand. Make it so I don't think you're so stuffy, you're too good for me. If I had a choice between Virgin Airlines and Delta, and the prices weren't too ridiculously different, I'd go Virgin. Because of Sir Richard Branson. No other reason. I even have Delta miles I'm collecting, and I would put that aside to go on a Virgin flight. Who knows? Maybe Branson will be there serving orange juice. You don't know. You don't know. You never know. This is Busta Rhymes. Busta Rhymes is the brand himself. And his real name, I hope he doesn't get mad for me saying, but Trevor Smith Jr. is who this really is. But he is Busta Rhymes. He's the brand itself. And when you listen to Busta Rhymes, he has a hard hip-hop image that he upholds. And he's very serious about upholding that image. Just look at his graffitied picture here. That's pretty terrifying, right? And when I hear Busta Rhymes on the radio, all I hear is what he portrays himself as musically. And so for me, he seems like a very hard hip-hop individual. He says some angry things. Now, as the brand, Busta Rhymes made a video, and please understand that I know how this works. Busta Rhymes has a group of people that help manage his brand and his image, and they put this together along with Google Music, who was trying to break out and become the new iTunes. They're still trying, I think. But they put this video together of Busta Rhymes interacting with his fans. And he does so in such a friendly, engaging, and personable way that it makes him seem like a much softer individual. He doesn't seem like hard, angry Busta Rhymes. He seems like likable, friendly, and engaging Busta Rhymes. And when you watch him interact with his fans, because what he did is he invited his fans to spit like Busta. That's what he says that they should do, and they come in and they try to duplicate one of his long sets of rap lyrics that are very complex and hard to say. And they videotape themselves doing this, his fans do, and then they upload it to YouTube. And Busta gathered in the video, Busta gathered his friends around to watch. Come look at this. Come look at this. And the whole time you're watching it, all that I see happening is ice melting. Busta Rhymes goes from seeming like an individual that has a real connection to his hard hip-hop image, and he instead transforms into somebody that's a little bit softer. Now, what's the benefit to Busta Rhymes for changing his own brand image to something that's just a little softer? Well, the more people he engages, the more records he sells, and the more tickets he sells at concerts. So he might have a very hard image, but as he loosens it just a little, he opens up his audience base just a little bit more and benefits from that. Does he need to do that? No, he made a decision. His image consultants made a decision. His brand storytelling team made a decision. Busta, let's soften you up a little bit and have you interact with your fans so you seem more personable. Check it out, folks. It's a quick Google away. Spit like Busta.
Actually, Jason, I've already added it to our Facebook group, so if you want to check it out, you can find it there.
Yeah, you could watch that. Although, if you watch that now, you're going to miss out on some really exciting stuff. So, pace yourselves, everybody. There's a lot of goodness. All right. We've been talking about the owners of brands. We've been talking about the brands themselves. But there's another category of real people. These are the employees. And the employees come in a couple different categories. We've got frontline employees that we deal with as customers face to face. And that's what we have here. We've got a real face-to-face frontline employee. And what in the world is she doing?
Well, Jason, what you see here are the famous and much adored flight attendants of Southwest Airlines.
Yes.
So these employees, frontline employees of the company, of the brand, are famous for their airborne stand-up routines and their comedic performances. And so these employees take to the skies on hundreds of Southwest flights each day, crossing the jet streams with thousands of passengers. So many opportunities there. And we all know that traveling is a kind of a stressful situation, and that flying itself could be somewhat anxiety producing, right? So what an amazing opportunity that these frontline employees have to leverage when they leave their passengers with a joke or a funny story that they can tell their family instead of a traveling horror story.
Right. I think people by default, when they get off a plane and they see a loved one, first it's hug, and then what was the worst part of your trip is usually what comes out of the mouth next. And how different is it for these Southwest customers? It's a hug, and then let me tell you about this amazing lady that I was on a plane with.
And what's great about the picture that we see here is, the several looks that we can see of passengers in the background. So she's not talking specifically to that gentleman in the back, but we can see that he is clearly engaged and enjoying, how she is relaying important safety information for their flight.
Absolutely. Delta does this too. Delta's got several viral videos out of flight attendants that are being very engaging, very exciting, and they're acting as good brand representatives themselves. It lets everybody know that they're real people. And when you're looking for customers to relate, when you're looking for stories and characters to relate to, you're looking for people that are real and that make sense to you. As the brand storyteller, it's your job to go and find a way to collect these employee stories. Sometimes that might be a survey. There may be some informal discussions, but your employees, especially if you have a bunch of them, have a bunch of different stories. They have bouquets of personal stories. Some of them would be a great boost or benefit to your brand story, and some of them wouldn't be. So you begin that process of collecting as many stories as you can, and then curating the ones that best represent or are in alignment with your brand.
And I would also argue, Jason, that these employees probably have some really great ideas on how to continue to engage this audience. As sort of the frontline people out there every day interacting with them, they might see a lot of opportunities that might not be present or available to someone who is not right out there with every customer interaction.
Right. I mean, they certainly are where the rubber meets the road, and that's the best place to gather those. All right. There's also employees that are behind the scenes. I'm sure you can imagine, like for an airline, we've got the baggage handlers and the luggage, the people that plan the flights. We've got all these different groups of people out there that are able to add to the story besides the ones that are right there in face-to-face. But now let's take a look at another category of real characters from your brand story. These are the customers. These are the people that interact with your brand and decide what to say about you. They decide what stories to tell about you. Now, it's easy to imagine the different ways to collect stories from these groups. In the old days, it was surveys, that little card that they had in the back seat of the airplane with the motion sickness bag. There was also a survey you could take out there, for instance. But these days, stories are collected over social media. Southwest can say, tell us about your flight. Delta can say, what was your favorite thing about your trip today? And they're going to get responses. They're going to get some people that are spitting mad angry. And they can probably, if that's in public, they can politely address that. But they're obviously not going to choose that to represent their brand in a list of stories from customers. It's their job, again, to curate, to go through and collect the best stories that represent the brand.
But also what an amazing opportunity to address a bad customer experience. So perhaps, let's say, if Southwest did say, how was your flight? And one of the customers got on there and put them on blast about something that happened. What an amazing opportunity that Southwest has at that point to reach out to that individual and say, you know what, I'm so sorry that happened. It should have never been that way, and how can we help make this right? And so they've taken what is, could be a negative, impact from the story that was shared and turned it into them taking responsibility, reaching out, and trying to make amends for that situation.
Absolutely. This would be a great moment for us to stop and also redirect everybody to think about your scenario. Think about your personal situation. Do you have a brand that you represent? Are you the brand? Are you part of a barbershop quartet that's trying to brand itself? If that's the case, think about the customers that are specific to you. Southwest customers are not going to be like yours. And the Dollar Shave Club's customers are not going to be like Delta's. So consider what works for you and think about ways to make it work for you if you'd like it to. It's a very good way to reach out and let your potential customers know that your current customers are happy, but it's very specific on a brand-by-brand situation. So run that simulation and see.
Yeah, and so you're using the word customers, Jason, but we could put clients in there. We could put friends. We could put fans. We could put followers. We could put students. Really. So again, just kind of circling back and asking yourself, how does this apply to the brand that I am thinking about today?
Right. We also say that we're building communities. So these are the members of that community, and they certainly have a voice. This is another one of those examples I'm hoping that you guys will go to the Facebook page to check out, or Google it yourself if you're elsewhere, and locate the collection of Air New Zealand commercials that are either Hobbit or Lord of the Rings themed. They've done such a good job here of bringing several different elements together, but I want to focus simply on their use of behind-the-scenes employees, frontline employees, and the customers themselves. When you watch this commercial, you're going to see it's a very tongue-in-cheek, cute little commercial about how very Hobbit-like things occur on Air New Zealand flights. And at the end of it, please wait until the end, it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the last 30 seconds is them cycling through headshots of their customers and of their employees that were in the commercial. Now, I'm sure you'll notice, like I do every time I watch this, that a lot of the acting is really bad. For instance, the pilots, they're supposed to be dwarves, and their acting is really, really bad. And every time I see that, I become very, very relieved to know that these aren't pilots that are one day hoping to be actors. They are actually the actors themselves. They are actually the pilots themselves. If they had dreams to be actors, they might not focus on flying. I'm looking for pilots that will be able to focus on flying more than anything else. So bad actors, in my opinion, are a plus. Check it out. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you see how they're using these real characters in their media to be able to, well, basically make themselves more personable to everybody else watching. All right.
And to put a face on their brand.
That sounds good. I like the way that sounds.
I do too.
Yeah. There are some downsides, of course, and I don't want to get too far down this dark road, but there are some downsides to using real people. If you've got real people representing your brand, you run the risk of those real people doing really bad things that make your brand look bad. I don't even really want to get into this or talk about these people. I just want to say that this is a situation that brand storytellers need to be concerned about and be very cautious about, and maybe even think about ways to mitigate the amount of damage that could be done by a real person that represents your brand. I'm not sure if you could look deeply enough into their hearts to find out what they're capable of, which is really back where we started. It's just hard to tell who to trust, and just be careful out there.
Yeah, just more of a word of caution.
Yeah. Good luck. These are some characters that we're going to start talking about that might be fictional characters, but they do not make good fictional brand storytelling characters. These are non-examples. And here's what's wrong with them. Mr. Peanut, and then the Bic character, you may not know this, but his name is Bic Boy. Bic Boy and Mr. Peanut don't do anything. They have no actions. They don't even really have a setting. Maybe once a year you'll see Mr. Peanut at a New Year's Eve party, but all he's doing is standing there holding peanuts. It's not an action. He's not really a character. And we could maybe have this debate and argue about how they represent something else or blah, blah, blah. But I just want to use this as an example, a non-example of brand storytelling characters.
Because they're mostly just iconic representations in the form of graphics. They don't really do anything. There's no story associated with these characters. But by contrast, how about these guys?
Oh, they're so colorful. And while they might not be great examples of fictional characters for a brand story, they certainly have story. They certainly have a little plot. Their plot is more episodic. Every time a commercial shows up, jammed in between Scooby-Doo and Bugs Bunny, there's a little tiny episode for these cereal commercials. And they've got a very simple plot with a try, fail, and in their cases, try, fail. We've got the Trix Rabbit, who really, really just wants to eat the cereal, but the children won't share with him. And in the other example, we've got Lucky the Leprechaun, who really doesn't want to share his cereal with the kids. Basically, there's a lot of selfishness going on here. But there's also a lot of story. It's not very deep. It's not very good. It's very basic, but it is story. And so these guys are a step closer to being fictional representatives of your brand story. Now, we've already looked at Mayhem, and we've already talked about Flow, but I wanted to pull these guys back again because they are such good examples of fictional brand storytelling characters. Mayhem does a very good job of personifying chaos. When you involve yourself with this character, when you attach yourself, or when you have an emotional connection to this character, your emotional connection is the action. It's what he does. It's what it means to be mayhem and chaos. You can contrast that with Flow. Flow does not have a lot of actions. She's very light on the actions. You have to hunt for them and really try to justify the actions. Because Flow is more about the personality. She's got a face, but she's also got mannerisms and behaviors and ways that she acts that make us feel one way or the other about her. We know Flow. We want to watch Mayhem. In both cases, fictional characters, and in both cases, they represent what their company brand wants people to think about them. Or at least, in Mayhem's case, what their company's brand can overcome if they have to. Okay, well that brings us to the applying characters to your scenario exercise. In this one, again, you're going to go use a digital tool, and you are going to do what you can to bring your real characters to life. You're going to be talking about how you bring these characters to life and how you curate their stories, because anybody can have employees, but it's up to the brand storyteller to bring them to life. Anybody can curate stories, but how do you share those stories with the people? And you also have to decide for yourself, think about your particular scenario. Are fictional characters appropriate? And take that a step further even. What would you consider trying if you could use fictional characters appropriately? You're going to be sharing all these using digital presentation tools. We offered 3 options. You can choose another if you like. But if you haven't used Powtoons, if you haven't used, what else do we have up there besides Powtoons?
Prezi.
Prezi is another good one. And there's a third one up there. If you check out those 3 different digital presentation tools, choose one that you like. And if it's a little hard at first, stick with it. Because using these tools is a great secondary benefit to doing this exercise and preparing to use characters for your brand storytelling scenario.